Welcome to the broadcast Fruits of the Harvest. Yesterday the royal family remembered the late Queen Elizabeth II on the 3rd anniversary of her death. Can you believe that it's been 3 years, hasn't it? Flown by, Basketeers, it's just flown by in a whirlwind, and she was pictured in this beautiful portrait in a cornflower blue confection, setting off her twinkles and her smile with pearls and a sapphire. And of course with her last gasp at a very moment in time, King Charles III ascended the throne, ensuring a seamless succession to sovereignty and the monarchical line unbroken for centuries. So 3 years a king for Charles. In fact, last year, this third year of his reign has been the busiest out of the three, with no less than 175 days of engagements, while returning to London every week when he's not here for his cancer treatments. King Charles has proved himself to be a sure and steady and devoted servant to his subjects, whether you love him for his unceasing and thoughtful work, his love of nature and literature, and the love of his consort, or if you loathe him and can't bear the man for his misplaced ebullience for a multi-faith society, or his climate change enthusiasms, or for his love of his consort. Whether or not you like him, it cannot be denied that he does his utmost and his very best to try and bring positivity, lightness, and goodness to everything he touches. He's very well intentioned, all while undergoing treatment for a very serious disease, and while dealing with a very turbulent family life and lots of drama, a wayward son, a toxic daughter-in-law, a beloved daughter-in-law taken poorly, very poorly, with her own health concerns, and the suicide of a cousin of his second cousin's husband, and more recently the death of a beloved royal duchess just last week. It's a lot to cope with for anyone, let alone a king. Mourning black has been observed in the royal wardrobe in the wake of the death of the Duchess of Kent. White is also an option during this time of grief and mourning, sometimes purple, although that's a little old-fashioned now. But William and Catherine have been seen in black at respective events that they were at and attending, and the King was seen wearing black at the Braemar Gathering. It's one of the unfortunate consequences of wearing black that it can sometimes be read as a charcoal grey, when in fact it's supposed to look more funereal, and it's actually why a lot of gentlemen will opt for a midnight blue in their suits, because midnight blue comes over black in a lot of photography or under electric light. You see, it comes across blacker than black is able to do. But he was wearing black, and the Queen was wearing a black armband, and a minute's silence was observed at those Braemar Games. Now, I saw some quarters chastising Queen Camilla for not wearing a totally black outfit on her first outing. I'm told that a black armband, as she wore, is entirely appropriate. Of course, we will see her later on at the funeral in days to come, but she is, in fact, displaying her respect, and if it were a more formal engagement, I'm sure that you would have seen more black in Queen Camilla's wardrobe, but she must place the gesture in the context of the environment and the event that she is at, as well as an occasion for mourning, as this week is. This was also a traditional gathering to bring joy to the people of Braemar, and she has a duty as queen too, to her people, so you see it's a balance that she has to try and strike for the right effect, and I believe that she did so. The Edinburghs have also been seen in black this week before reverting back to colour. Westminster Cathedral will play host to the first Catholic funeral service for a royal in modern history, and this is going to be on Tuesday the 16th of September, where the Duchess of Kent will be laid to rest in Windsor, and the King is going to join the Duke of Kent at the Requiem Mass with his consort and with members of the royal family. Following the Mass, which is to be led by the Cardinal Archbishop of Westminster, the coffin will travel by hearse to the royal burial ground at Frogmore, accompanied by the Dean of Windsor, and at present she is resting in the private chapel at Kensington Palace. In my previous broadcast, I held forth on the subject of Catherine's hair and the situation that she finds herself in, the dilemma of what to do as she transitions through the seasons, and you will have heard that I advised Catherine, as I've done quite a lot in the past, to draw inspiration from the Princess Royal and wear updos during the daytime. And I wouldn't suggest that for any old royal, but Catherine happens to have luscious, very long hair, a very long mane, and if you watch the footage as much as I do, and I watch the footage of all of her events, she's constantly pawing at it and it's flopping all over the place. So yes, it can look wonderful, but it's impractical. This is my problem with it. I advised her to wear updos during the daytime and, let loose in the evenings if she wants to with up and down styles. I would find that to be far more practical and age appropriate, dare I say. Well, the following day after I issued my advice, she appeared in public, having followed my suggestion to the T and to the letter. Do you see the improvement? Do you see the enhancement? The appropriateness? I think you do. And I think enough said. How much freer does she look as well? How much happier without having to worrying about it flop all over the place. And she was able to compromise with sweeping it up at the front and letting it loose at the back as well. So she's found a way to do it with the best of both worlds. Do you understand? Now, of course, yesterday she switched it back to the tresses and they were flopping all over her chocolate brownie, just like Meghan's does on her show. So I'm not saying that she is going to be wearing ponytails forever onwards, but at least she is experimenting, because you can do so much with so much hair, can't you? And she does possess an enviable mane of hair, but it was in danger of swamping her, and it still is at times. And no internet, no stupid social media cesspits out there. It is not a wig, you stupid, dumb fucks. It is not a wig. Not that there's anything wrong with wearing them, so nobody has to throw a great big hissy fit, but it's actually a credit to the profusion and the condition of Catherine's hair that some cretinous creatures attempt to mock her by suggesting that it is. And if you haven't been mocking her, then I'm not referring to you, whether or not you think she's been wearing wigs. But it's a preposterous suggestion. I'm perfectly aware how realistic a great wig can be, but I also know that that is not one. It's called good hair and a blow-dry. That's it. End of story. And she was quite happy to show off that very fact. Some have said in response to all of the whispering that's been going round, the wicked whispering. One wouldn't blame her for doing so. And as I said, there is of course the possibility that she adds in a few extra wefts here and there for more volume, but the princess has retained full and enviable coverage. And there would be no shame at all in it, even if she was as bald as a coot, as my own mother was when she went through her own treatments for cancer and her own radiotherapy and her own chemotherapy. So for those of you who think that I am so ignorant about the fact, no, I haven't been through what Catherine's going through, but my nearest and dearest have, and I was there to witness it every step of the way. So I know what it looks like and I know what it's all about. And that's not the only member of my family that's been through it all. In fact, my mum's mother went through a very serious episode involving her brain many decades ago that was so severe that someone was called in to give her the last rites, basically, and all the relatives came from far-flung corners of the kingdom to say their goodbyes. This was before I was born. But just at the last moment, when all hope seemed lost, an absolutely fantastic, renowned surgeon who was due to depart the country on that very day and who had arrived at the airport to leave had his flight cancelled. And his journey abroad was cancelled. He was summoned back to the hospital because he became available. He was able to do the surgery on my grandmother and saved her life. And I'm told that she, as a result of this major surgery, had a bald head for a while, and actually she did, I think, rely on a wig at that time, and her full head of hair grew back. But I always played with my grandmother's hair a lot as a child, still do from time to time, dressing it up in curlers and such like, and back combing it all through, teasing it for her. It was one of our favourite pastimes, and I used to feel the scar at the back of her head, and she had sort of two dips here either side of the skull, just two little dips, nothing too scary, but she used to tell me that's where the screws went in. I don't know what was going on there, but whatever it is, they did save her life. I'm digressing, but I'm just letting you know that I know about the repercussions of these kind of adventures all too well. Well, I think that Catherine is lucky enough to compare favourably, even at her age, surrounded by much younger girls. I think she compares very favourably to just about anyone that you put her next to, if not everyone. Jealousy is a terrible thing, isn't it? And I've got to say, in this case, it seems to be found more among her fellow women, a lot more than men. Jealousy, envy for somebody who is not only knockout gorgeous, but knockout goodness along with it is just way too much for so many people to handle, isn't it? The Megans of this world. It drives them into all kind of twists and turns, and they just can't get their head around the fact that someone is that great. William and Catherine were watching rival rugby teams, and they were 100 miles apart on this day in support of the Women's Rugby World Cup. And then yesterday it was back to work. And look out for the three bears, because Goldilocks was back in town with the tresses flowing. Although I noticed that they didn't look quite so goldeny, so perhaps she's already beginning to brunette things up again. But the Prince and Princess of Wales were in Suningdale to meet local members of Suningdale Women's Institute to learn about their work and how it gives opportunities for ladies to make friends and learn new skills. There was lots of cake, and there were baking tips shared. It was very quaint. And the Women's Institute, or the WI, holds a special connection to Her late Majesty, who was a member for 80 years, joining in 1943 and serving as president of the Sandringham WI until her death. They said, very special opportunity to hear from members today. I don't like that. I don't like that. Very special opportunity. It was a very special opportunity, or even better, today provided a very special opportunity. Are we really going to be getting in the habit, as future king of this nation, to be dismissing half of the English language by disregarding half a sentence? Is that really what it's coming to? Very special opportunity to hear from members today about the importance of the late Queen's involvement in the organisation and those who met with her during her reign. And the ladies were asking William and Catherine about the children and their temperaments and their characters, and they were trying not to give too much away, but Prince William did tell us. He said when George is behind closed doors, it's a completely different ballgame. So it sounds as if little Prince George is already cultivating and has cultivated a public persona involving a little of the Old English reserve, which I think is rather encouraging. All is not what it seems. The shy, bashful, retiring, reserved young prince is holding back some of the elements of his nature for his private life, which I think is quite reassuring, because I think it's very sovereignly, and very in the manner of the late Queen Elizabeth, don't you think? Encouraging. Well, of course, not everything can be hunky-dory, and the reason my teeth are itching is because Harry is in the kingdom. He is on royal soil. And he paid his so-called respects to Granny on the anniversary of her death at St. George's Chapel, brazenly silent on the matter of the obscene disrespect shown for her life and legacy. Oh, he's mute on that, isn't he? He picks and chooses when to show respect. And I would say that it's entirely performative, and I'm so sorry to be so cynical. I wonder if he goes visiting the grave of his other grandmother, Frances, every time he's in town. He laid a wreath and he laid some flowers, and I'm sure he laid his wife too, but that does not a discerning gentleman make. Could it possibly be, in my deeply misguided and cynical opinion, that the entire scene of mourning has been brewed and executed to try and steal the headlines and shape the story and control the narrative, while William, the heir apparent, and his princess were simultaneously commemorating the late Granny Liz in a joint public engagement 8 miles away on the other side of Great Windsor Park? Could that possibly explain your appearance, Harry, and your timing? Sussex had arrived in London to be ushered through the privacy of the Windsor suite, and then he was transferred to Windsor Castle in a Range Rover. He was last in the kingdom back in April, so not quite so long ago, but he's going to be spending this week engaging with his UK-based charities. Will Harry brush shoulders with his beloved Pa? That's the quiz. Did his minions remember old Mains and Macquarie on their little sojourn over here to meet with the King's Communications Secretary? Will they have smoothed over the scheduling with Tobin Andrea? Well, as a matter of fact, the King is in Balmoral, He does return to London once a week for his cancer treatments, even while he stays at Balmoral, so ostensibly you could say there's a chance of them brushing shoulders, but Harry has a full schedule of mischief and merchandising, no doubt, so it's unlikely, but Sussex is no doubt doing all he can to oil his way back in. In fact, my information is that Prince Harry has been relentlessly making attempts to re-engage with Prince William. Just as the Sussex survivors described Meghan Sussex of always having somebody in her sights, Harry is fixated on William. He sees him as an obstacle to power, and he sees him as an obstacle to his association with royalty and therefore his brand, and as an obstacle to the throne. In fact, just as Harry has embraced his title as Spare and used it for merchandising, if he was to write a book about his brother, a poison pen memoir, and tell all about Big Willie, he would call it Obstacle. That is how he's always seen his brother, an obstacle to the throne, to his mother's affections, to being the favoured son, to having the favoured beloved daughter-in-law, obstacle, obstacle, obstacle. And I'm told, and it is my understanding, that it is not William, but it is what was referred to me as buffers, William's buffers, various aides and mutual friends between them. It's left to them to try and fend off Harry's advances all the time, because William does not want to engage, does not want to talk to him, and does everything in his power to escape from Harry's angling, but he is angling for an invitation to the coronation. This is his long-term goal. And William, in actual fact, would rather give the coronation seats to his homeless chums, his homeless friends that he's made and helped with their lives. He would much rather see them there at the coronation rather than his own brother. Doesn't that tell you something? And then we come round to the subject of Invictus. It looks like that could go the same way as Centre Barley and all of those ridiculous dramas if Harry doesn't pull his socks up and pull them up very fast. Because there has been a concatenation of abrupt departures from the board. Ring any bells? Yeah. The former captain of the Household Cavalry, Edward Lane Fox, who appears to be the gentleman who inspired Prince Harry's unique hairdo, which has been termed by myself as the dandelion affair. Well, he quit. Yes, he quit the board, oh so quietly departing earlier this year, and this has just come to light. It happened on the very same day that Patrick Nicole quit the board. And another one, J.J. Chalmers, he swiftly followed. Now, it is not unusual, of course, for moves of this kind on such a board, because there is a limit to the term that one can hold on such a board. But we must consider the timing in relation to the similar exodus that foreshadowed the dramas at Centre Barley, oh so recently, and the close relationship that these trustees have to Harry. What have they heard? What are they preparing for? Why are they jumping ship altogether? And are they doing so before Harry himself jumps the ship or is pushed from it? He wants to cling on to Invictus for Birmingham. Of course he does, in a few years' time. But will Pa and Willie turn up to the event, as he so desires them to be, and as Mains and Maguire had been dispatched to arrange on his behalf, in discussion with Tobin Andre? At the Wellchild Awards, Harry brandished his todger. Oh no, it's not his todger. This looks far more impressive than the appendage enjoyed by Sasha Walpole. Oh no, it's a sword that would burst with one little prick. Jousting and parrying for the crown, but parroting a court jester without the wit. So will the boy with the bad morals rock up at Balmoral? That's the quiz. Move over the great soprendo. Harry is carving out a career as a magician. Isn't that wonderful? Piff, puff, poof. The Duchess of Edinburgh has been working very hard in Canada. She's had a very busy time being photographed consoling a Navy veteran who had been speaking about his struggles with PTSD at the Veterans Association in her capacity as the new royal patron of Spruce Meadows. Her Royal Highness also met with representatives from Pacific Assistance Dog Society, PADS, marking the end of a 3-day whirlwind tour myriad engagements with politicians, business leaders, athletes. There were performers, military folk, indigenous community representatives, and the president of Spruce Meadows said of Sophie, "Her Royal Highness touched so many hearts while she was here, including mine. She was remarkable, and the entire visit exceeded every expectation we might have had. The Duchess of Edinburgh lived up to her reputation in every way, and I couldn't be more appreciative." Isn't that wonderful? Nor could we, my dear. And the Duke of Edinburgh has been in Leicester, with Edward popping into the brachytherapy department at the Royal Infirmary and their new state-of-the-art Thornton Suite, a facility to support the treatment of gynecological cancers with a specialised form of radiotherapy. At the Jury Wall Museum, he was able to witness how technology is bringing to life one of the largest surviving Roman structures in Britain. And at Leicester Cathedral, he was able to admire the completed restoration work and the tomb of King Richard III. Thank you for joining me. Stay fruity and always on royal duty. Ta-ra and toodle pip.